Thank you for the invitation to you from you and the team. A little bit about this presentation. It's actually built around or based on my own story. I was 30 years in information technology in a number of different companies, always working in corporate America. And after my second bout of unemployment in 2013, I started doing these little gigs. And a year later, I started my own company. And people asked me, how do I do it? And what do I do? And what's the process? So that's what this program is about, and it's grown a bit over time. So if you haven't seen it for a while, there's probably a slide or two that's new. And that's the basis of this program. There we go. So just want to let you know a couple of program caveats, of course, as we get started. And that is, I am not an attorney. I'm not an insurance broker. I'm not a tax professional. So there will be a couple of times when I will mention to you, here are some things that you may want to talk to an attorney or an insurance agent or tax professional. This program, we're just a friend talking to a friend, right? Like two people having a cup of coffee. And so I'm going to give you my advice from the information I've learned, but you may need to consult an attorney on your own. So that's what this program caveat. So it is possible that some of the information they have, it may not be exactly pertinent to you. You will need to talk to your own insurance tax professional or attorney. Just be aware of that. And just a little bit about me. I've met a lot of you, or I know a lot of you from different job seeker support groups. A lot of you not yet, so nice to meet you. But I'm an IT consultant. That's my company, Princeton Technology Advisors. And as you can see, my logo has my headshot on it, so that's kind of nice. So I officially started it in 2014. And we do all manner of information technology consulting. My clients tend to be small business and not-for-profit organizations. I do lots of small contracts with different clients. We do managed services, we do web work, and the thing I enjoy most are different technology projects for the company, managing them for them. And also where you and I know each other, those of us that do, is from the job seeker support community. And we certainly are a very friendly and warm and tight community. I do lead a group in Princeton called PSG, or Professional Service Group of Mercer County. And Janelle has been gracious enough to come visit and present a number of times. I'm also very active in other groups, including the Breakfast Club of New Jersey, which is in East Brunswick, the Career Support Group, which is in Hamilton, and I'm one of the co-facilitators at New Jersey Job Seekers, and that's also in Princeton. So if you want any information specifically about any of them, look for websites, psgofmercercounty.org, psgofmercercounty.org. It's a 120-page website. It's a great resource for anybody who's in career transition, so you're welcome to take a look at that. And by the way, this slide deck will be made available. I've already sent a copy to Janelle. It's also going to be on my website, and I will show you the link to my website at the end of the presentation. So you're welcome to download and keep a copy of this presentation. So let's first talk about what really is the gig economy. And really it's a trend now in the way companies are hiring independent consultants and temporary workers for a specific job. That's going on more and more. And it started before COVID. It's probably a bit more active right now in the pandemic environment, but that's what companies are doing. They have a specific project in mind. They need a workforce to get them through it. That's the gig, that project. And then when the gig is over, the project's complete, those temporary or consultants are no longer with the company. And so gig workers are the independent contractors, the contract firm employees, they're part-timers, and they tend to be assigned to these short-term or long-term projects, but it's fairly temporary. And so that's really what the gig economy is. And working as a consultant is an alternative to full-time employment. And really what this program is to really get you in the mindset of being open to working as a consultant. And a lot of what this content is, so it is the future of work for many of us. And a lot of what this content is really be the mindset of being a bit independent as a consultant. Certainly if you work for a large consulting company, You may get hired by them, so you're an employee. Your relationship with the consulting company is as an employee, and they'll place you on contract. When you're a bit independent, you don't have the association with a company as your employer. You're the employer. So we're going to talk a lot more about that, but I'm happy to answer any questions that are going to be on either side, either working at a contract consulting or being your own independent. And when you think about what a consultant is, well, it's someone who provides skills, expertise, advice, service to any other person or organization, and they do so professionally, essentially getting paid for it. And you typically work under a fixed contract and you complete a designated project. You're a hitman. You go in, you do the job and go out. And in New Jersey, these are the most famous hitmen. They do their job and they leave. And so as a consultant, we kind of do the same thing. Some of the contracts can be short, some of them can be medium and long in length, doesn't really matter, but you're there typically for a specific reason. So let's talk about some of the differences between being an employee that a lot of us probably know and being a consultant, because there are some differences. Typically, as an employee, you receive benefits. Matter of fact, probably a lot of people have told me, I don't want to be a consultant, I won't get any benefits. So typically your employer company will offer you some sort of benefits, whether it's personal time off, insurance, and other things. And typically as a consultant, especially when you're independent, you don't have paid benefits. So there's one of the differences right there. Another thing is actually your employer pays half of your FICA taxes. These are your employment taxes that typically cover Social Security and Medicare. So when you are working as an employee, that's one of the benefits that you get. But when you're a consultant, you're obligated to pay the full employment tax on your own. That's 15.3%. That's a federal tax, not a state tax. As an employee, you get paid by a paycheck. And then after the year is completed, typically in January, they send you a W-2, which shows you your income and any taxes you've paid. And then that, of course, goes on to your tax returns when you file at the end of the year. As a consultant, you don't get a paycheck. You typically issue an invoice or request for payment, and then you get paid by check. And then instead of getting a W-2, you get what's called a 1099. 1099 MISC for miscellaneous income. Now, you've probably received 1099s before, probably from your bank, 1099 INT, or if you have any stocks or mutual funds, 1099 DIV. Same type of document. And usually you will get that in January as well. What's convenient for a lot of us is when you're employed, your income and payroll taxes are paid via your paycheck. So a lot of us complain, look how much taxes I've got taken out. Yeah, I get it. It kind of stinks a little bit, but it's taken care of for you. When you are independent, when you're working as an independent consultant, you actually have to pay and file your income taxes quarterly. Now, if you don't file quarterly and you file all at the end of the year, you may be subject to some penalty, maybe a few dollars or a little larger. So you do want to estimate your taxes and pay them quarterly. Also, as an employee, you have very limited tax deductions that you can take. The IRS was much more generous several years ago, and actually the latest takeaway was the income tax reform for 2018 did take away a lot of the tax deductions that you may have taken as part of your job-related expenses. And so there's very little that's available. You will have to talk to your accountant about that. But as a consultant having your own business, you've got a lot of tax deductions that are potentially business expenses that are available to you. So for instance, I'm presenting on my desktop computer. When I bought that a couple of years ago, it was a tax deduction. I've got my Logitech camera right in front of me, my printer to my right, and all sorts of other things here. They were all tax deductions. They were expenses that offset my income. And there are others that are available to you too. So you need to talk to your own accountant about that to see what makes sense. So you can reduce your taxable income through expenses more easily being independent as a consultant, kind of running your own business. So what's in it for the client? Why are clients hiring consultants? Why are they doing that for those gigs? Well, for one thing, staff are easier to hire and fire or terminate. It just becomes a lot easier that way. So typically when they hire and terminate employees, they may go through a much more rigorous approval process, and maybe even near the end when they have to let people go, bring in HR and the legal department. But as a consultant, it's not the case. You write up a contract, you know what it's specifically about. The work is over, you are no longer needed. It's a lot easier process. There also tends to be no long-term commitment. The commitment tends to be about the length of the contract. And when the project is done and the contract is complete, there's no more commitment that way. You also get a very objective and seasoned team member. And you might say, well, yeah, shouldn't you be hiring people that way? Well, people hire people differently than they contract people. And so a lot of times they hire people that they like to work with, and they can train them on something that they don't know. But as a contractor, you're coming in as an expert. So you're really coming in with skills that the employees don't yet have as a contractor. So they're really looking for you to come in at hitman mentality, come in and do that job. And ultimately, it does save money on the project for the client. They're not paying the benefits, they're not paying to train or bring you up to date, they're not paying personal time off. Any other expenses that they may need to do, like provide you a computer or other things, may not be necessary. So ultimately, it can be a lot less expensive. And, oh, excuse me, Janelle, your mic was on. Yep, good. So what's in it for you? So we know what's in it for the client. What's in it for you? Why might you want to consider being a consultant? Well, at the very least, it fills a resume gap. So if you have been laid off or unemployed for a period of time, there is unemployment bias, unfortunately, in the marketplace. I'm sure Janelle and the other recruiters in the marketplace can mention that. So now you are working as a consultant, so you don't have to explain long gaps, or you've filled in for that long gap. You know, you usually get paid more than the employees do. You'll get an hourly rate, and one reason why you're getting paid more, there's a premium for your expertise. That's part of it. And also the employer knows you are covering a lot of your own expenses that they don't need to cover. So that's part of your rate as well. Now, you may have health insurance covered by a spouse or partner. You don't have to pay that expense out. That's up to you. But employers know that you kind of expect that. Also, you do get a current position on your LinkedIn profile. In order to have a 100% complete LinkedIn profile, or to be considered a LinkedIn all-star, you need to have what's called a current position. A current position just isn't the one at the top. It's one that has no end date. So it might be like September 2020 to present. That would be no end date. If you don't have that type of position, then what happens is you do not have a 100% LinkedIn profile, and the LinkedIn search criteria, search engine, may rank you a little lower than people who have a 100% complete profile. You have the opportunity to develop a greater variety of experience than maybe you would as an employee. The reason why, there are certain industries that just hire people with industry experience. But as a consultant, you may be hired for project experience, for technical experience, for job-related experience, less so with the industry. So an example, you may never have worked professionally in the pharmaceutical industry or medical device or other industries that like people from within the industry. But if you have a core skill they need to get them through a project, those industries may bring you in for that reason. Now you've got that on your resume. Okay? So companies are more willing to also contract older staff while they hire younger staff. So there is ageism or age discrimination. Lots of people talk about it. It's very real. You may have experienced it yourself. Some of you may be trying to hide your age, as I do. I color my hair. So, what happens is the companies really want the experience and the savvy and the calm under pressure that older staff have. But sometimes they're concerned about the added cost of older staff. So they hire younger staff and train them up. But on a contract, they'll bring you in because you don't impact their bottom line the same way as an employee will. And also, you may say, I don't want to be a contractor, I don't want to be a consultant. Unless it's being a contract to hire, I'll only entertain contract to hire positions. Well, in order to be open to contract to hire, you have to really be open to contract. So you may not find out that this contract position is contract to hire until you're there for a few months and they can't do without you. So be open to being a contractor. It may turn into a full-time employed opportunity with all those benefits that you're hoping to get as a full-time. So if you want the opportunity to be hired off of a contract or as a consultant, do be open to being a consultant. So that's really what's in it for you. But if you're not quite convinced yet, let me kind of talk you out of it. Maybe why not be a consultant? And a lot of people give me excuses when I talk with them about why they can't or don't want to be a consultant. And let's see if I can negate some of that for you. For one is, consultants, this is what we've heard, consultants are not treated as well as the employees. And maybe, when you've worked in other companies, you may have seen that. Maybe the employees all have their own cubes and offices, but the consultants are in a pit. Maybe the employees are invited to office parties and summer picnics and things like that, and the consultants are not. Well, to tell you the truth, you may be treated better than the employees, and I have a story about that. A few years ago, I was found by a recruiter he was in Chicago, suburban Chicago. He had a client that needed someone like me with my expertise to come in and really a hitman project. It was a 3-day project in suburban Chicago. I bought my ticket on a Friday to fly out up to Chicago on a Monday morning, took the 7 o'clock flight or 6:45 flight, got to Chicago, got picked up by a car service, taken to the office. That was very nice. Met the CIO, who was going to be my supervisor for the few days. And he put me in the office right next to him, a really nice office. And then told me who the people are I got to talk to in the finance department. So I went over to the finance department and I was going to introduce myself. And the very first woman, one of the managers there, she yelled at me, "Do you know how long I've been waiting for that office? I've been in this company for years. You walk in for the first day and you get a nice office and I'm still in this cube." I was treated a little bit better than her. Plus they gave me the car service, nice hotel, airfare. So I was treated very well. So it's not always the case that you're not treated well as a contractor. As a contractor, you might get into the position, you might be unhappy. A lot of people say that, yeah, I'll get into that contract, I'll be unhappy. Well, it's also possible you'll be hired into a company and you'll be unhappy. Remember, I think it was Gary who said, you're interviewing the company as well. So yeah, you might be unhappy, but you know what? You'll move on. One thing with a contract is because it's not permanent, you'll likely move on. And even if you're not happy, they paid you. The joke's on them. There are some unpaid administrative tasks. So for instance, you might be putting in the 7 to 8 hour day and invoicing for that, and that's fine. But you also have to spend time filling out timesheets, maybe sending in an invoice and some other administrative tasks. Yeah, that's part of it as well. But on the other hand, you typically get larger hourly rates than the employees. So that's another reason why it can be advantageous. And then this is what people tell me all the time. I'm not going to be a consultant. I need benefits. And there are people who've told me, which boggles my mind, I will wait as long as it takes to get employed so I get benefits. Yeah, if you wait a long time, I usually ask, how are you getting benefits? Well, I have to pay for it out of my pocket. It stinks. Be a consultant. With the money you get, you can buy benefits. You get those larger hourly rates. It could be very beneficial, very cost beneficial for you. It may only be short term. I'm looking for that long-term project or that long-term employment. Well, folks, if you're here unemployed right now, there's no guarantee that, there's no employment that's guaranteed to be long-term. So your employment could be short-term as well. I worked for one company for 4 months as an employee. I worked for another company for 6 months as an employee, not as a consultant. Yep, they just happened to be short, whatever happened with them. Well, you know what? If you're on a 6-month contract and earning $50 an hour, which typically is the bottom of the range for most professionals, that's about $50,000 a year. So if you annualize it, that's a $100,000 salary. What could you do with $100,000? So think about that. And of course, if your hourly rate is higher, your annual is going to be higher as well. So it can be quite lucrative to be a consultant, and you can buy the benefits because of those larger hourly rates. And it can cover the unpaid administrative tasks that you may have to put in. So there are a lot of benefits. So why not be a consultant? I would say you should be consider being a consultant. Okay, so there is our first intermission. And I'm going to look at the chat. Come on, chat. And see if there are any questions, or you can type them right now. And I'm just going up to make sure I don't miss any. I see one just came through. Okay, so one from Patty. After your consulting gig expires, would you qualify for unemployment benefits before you land your next gig? So a lot of you know Marty Latman. I love Marty Latman and I quote him all the time. This is the one quote I use: it depends. If you are employed by a consulting company who places you on a contract, the likelihood is they are paying for unemployment insurance, and then yes, you would be able to claim the unemployment insurance and get reimbursed. That's if you're employed by a contracting company and placed on assignment. If you are an independent, you have the option to pay into the unemployment pool or not pay into the unemployment pool. I made the decision not to make the expense. I don't know what the cost is. But if I had paid into the pool and lost my contract, then yes, I would be eligible for those sort of unemployment benefits. Joe has a question. If you have an hourly rate that implies you put in a 10-hour day, you get paid for 10 hours, not a typical 8 hours. That's a statement, not a question. So I'm not really sure where you're going, but your contract can be hourly. Your contract can be daily. So we'll just make up round numbers. You may have a contract for $100 an hour. You may have a contract for $800 a day. The difference would be if you started putting in overtime, you can charge $100 an hour or whatever your contract says for the overtime. But if you're on a daily contract and you put in those 10 hours, you're still being paid the $800, the fixed daily rate. So I think that's where you're going with this, Joe, but you can clarify that if you'd like. Any other questions so far? And we're going to get into all sorts of things like how do you get health insurance and how do you build business and all that kind of stuff. Just wait another moment or two to see if there's a question that will come in. Janelle, this is where we need Jeopardy music playing or syncopated clock or something like that. Oops, just close.
Yes, you are right. Absolutely.
Yeah, or you can whistle, I guess. Okay, so just waiting to see if another question comes in. Oh, Joe says that answered it. Let's see. Kevin has a question. The large company I've sought for corp-to-corp contracts usually have an approved list of vendors that they work with. Should I target smaller to mid-sized companies? So I don't know anything about you, Kevin, or the type of business that you're doing. I can't answer this question thoroughly. But my position was for myself, I don't target large companies. They tend to have their approved vendor list, although there's no reason why I guess I could not try to get on an approved vendor list. So I typically myself look for small business or not-for-profit organizations that don't have an IT department but do need a robust IT resource. The reason why I call myself a robust IT resource is I also have a network of vendors that I can subcontract to. So if someone comes to me for something I don't do, I can help them that way. So, and what corp to corp basically means is you're an independent and you're being paid as a consultant on an hourly basis, and you'll get a 1099 at the end of the year. So, or subcontracting someone. So I don't think it's a problem targeting larger companies. You just may need a way in, a connection to get that relationship. So Amira is making well, it's a question. Good. Some companies require all sorts of insurance, including general, public, professional liability, property insurance. What would be reasonable coverage for an independent contractor? I actually have a slide for that, so I'm going to save that to just a little later. Otherwise, I will be repeating myself. But yep, there are a number of insurances that you may want or consider acquiring for yourself or your business, depending on how much risk you may assume or how much tolerance you have for the risk. We'll talk more about that in detail in a few minutes. Okay, and anything else? And just as a reminder, just to help me out, please put the word question ahead of your question so I don't confuse it as a statement that maybe you're making to share with other people in other chat comment. So let's move ourselves along, and we'll have another break in just a couple minutes, and then at the end we'll have even another break after that. So one thing that people want to know, if I'm going to be an independent consultant, do I need to have my own company? And there's different types of companies, and we'll talk about them. And the answer is no, you don't need to have a company. It's not a legal requirement to have a company. Just that easy. Now, in my case, I chose to form an LLC, limited liability company, which we'll talk to in a moment. But what if the client requires that? More and more clients are requiring that relationship. What they want to do is they don't want to legally engage an independent. They want to engage a company, a corporate entity, legal entity, and then put somebody on hire from the corporate entity. And that's what I did. I created my company. So my contracts are between my company and my client, and I placed me on every contract. And the reason why they do that, they want to have a separation, especially in New Jersey and a few other states, of legal entities, because New Jersey is a very pro-employee state. They have a lot of protections for employees. They do want to make sure that the employer company treats the employees properly, and they also want to make sure that the employer company is properly taking out income taxes. So if you put this legal entity between you, the worker, and them, the company, it makes it easier for them to bring you on as an independent through the company. Oops, let's get ourselves moving. Good. So, but what if they require, well, one thing is you can find a friend or colleague who has a company and they'll hire you. And so maybe that company, your friend's company or colleague, can engage technically into the contract with the client and then put you on the contract. So you can work that way. I don't know that this is the best idea, but it's easy. I'm someone with a company, so if you're interested, you can reach out and call me and see if I would be willing to hire you. But I'll tell you right now, I'm not willing to hire you. I don't hire employees. It's not something I'm interested in doing. Payroll is just not something I want to get involved with. But a company that has that set up already may be able to help you. You may find a consulting company like an Adecco or Robert Half or one of the others, and bring the job to them and say, hey, I found this great company. They're going to bring me on a contract. I need someone to represent me. That's a possibility too. I don't think it's the best option, but they'll be happy to take a percentage of the fee. Those consulting companies typically take a large chunk. That's what they're used to doing. You should be able to negotiate it down. You can just talk to Janelle about that. She talks a lot about negotiating skills. And the reason why is they also do recruiting. In this case, you're bringing them the position, so you may be able to give up a smaller chunk of the rate. If you have a good relationship with one of these companies, that may be an option for you. This, for me, is the best option unless you have your own company. There's something called split placement companies. Now, when I was an IT manager, occasionally I would hire independent consultants, and I put them in touch with a company called Top Echelon, that one that's there. And I also Googled split placement companies. I found this other one, NPA Worldwide. What Top Echelon is a professional employer. What they do is they allow consultants to come to them. They will engage in the contract with the client and bring the employee or the contractor on as an employee. So you'll be employed by Top Echelon for the length of the contract. And then when the contract is over, your employment with Top Echelon ends. So they are basically a professional hiring company. And you can check on their website. They even have, well, they used to, it's been a while since I've been on their website. They had this kind of screen where a calculator. You put in the rate that you're asking, the state that you're working in, and they'll tell you about what your rate will be after their fee. And or you can work, so you might say, well, I'm going to get $150 an hour. And then it'll say, well, if you're in New Jersey, I'm making up numbers, of course, your net's going to be $110.12. So kind of, now it's an estimate. If you say something like, I must absolutely have $100 an hour working for Top Echelon, it does the reverse calculation and it will tell you, you need to charge this amount. It might be $135 an hour, because they're getting the rest for managing it and a little bit of fee for themselves. You can also form your own company. It only takes a few weeks in New Jersey, and make sure you do get what's called an EIN, Employment Identification Number. It is like a social security number for the company, so that when you do your taxes for that portion of the income will be on the EIN, not on the social security number. These are the most common forms, or these are some of the common forms of business entities in New Jersey. We're just going to touch on these. We're not going to deep dive. This is going to be a real oversimplified summary of a lot of complex rules and laws. You really need to speak with an attorney and tax professional to see how it pertains to you. So if you remember, I said you don't need to form a company. You don't need any sort of legal entity. And that's what that sole proprietor is, the one at the top. You don't need to legally organize, but your liability is potentially unlimited. And so what that means is that if you commit some sort of accident and maybe it cost the company money and they sought to sue you to be made whole, you can be sued personally. And so we'll talk about liability insurance in a moment. And then your income tax shows up on your Schedule C, which is miscellaneous income and expenses. So your income goes in there, your expenses go in there, and then whatever's left over is taxable. The next is LLC, and there's a lot of different limited liability organizations. So this one's an LLC called Limited Liability Company, a sole member, and this is what's the most common for small business consultants. And this is what I created, an LLC. You do actually legally form the company. It's a legal entity in the state in which it's formed, and every state now has LLCs. And liability is considered limited, but not really. So the way it was explained to me by an attorney friend of mine is the first person that the first entity that the company will come after is the company. Well, my company is not worth a lot of money. I've got a computer and I've got an office space, a desk, I've got a laptop that I travel with, my printer, I probably have $20,000, $30,000 of value in my company. And heaven forbid that I created some sort of problem with the company worth more than that. Yeah, they would come after my company for, let's say, the $30,000 in value, and that would be it. The second entity that they come after is the person that did the work. So if you're the individual who owns the company and you did the work, then they'll come after you personally. So it's kind of like a sole proprietorship. So you do have to be careful. And that's where errors and omissions types of insurance can be helpful. And again, your income does show up on your Schedule C. So when you're an independent or a sole member LLC, it doesn't pay to form the company like in Delaware or Nevada where you get better tax treatment because it's just personal income. If you were a multi-member LLC, it might make sense to do something like that. The next is a C Corp. It's what we think of as a corporation. It is formed in the state. Again, there's the same relationship of limited liability as the LLC. And there is something that's considered double taxed because what happens is the corporation does file its own tax return. And then what the corporation will do is pay you a salary, and that shows up on your personal income tax, and you'll get a W-2. So some of the basically revenue that comes into the company can be double taxed. You do need to talk to a tax professional. There are potential advantages also. For instance, remember, you're paying that 15.3% of employment tax. You're paying that on all the income that you earn as an employee. Let's say you get a fairly large income for the corporation. And for numbers, we'll use 250,000. Now, you do have to pay yourself a legitimate salary. You can't just say, I'm going to pay myself $1 and the corporation will keep the money and I won't be double taxed. You can. So let's just use round numbers. You pay yourself a reasonable salary of $100,000, and there's now 150,000, the 250 less 100, left in the company. So in addition to your income tax, you're paying employment tax, 15.3%, on your $100,000 employment income. At the end of the year, you can pay yourself a dividend or distribution as an owner of the corporation. So you could pay yourself up to that whole 150,000. It is going to be taxed at your ordinary income rate, but you're not going to pay the 15.3% employment tax. It's not salary, it's a dividend. again, talk to a tax professional, but depending on your income structure, it may make sense for you to switch from an LLC to a corp, and you certainly can do that at any time. You could start it as an LLC and change to a corp. And an S corp is kind of a partnership agreement in a corporate environment. And it does similar, it's pass-through income. It shows up on your personal income on a separate form case. So it's not filing its own corporation per se, its own tax per se, but another type of corporation. These are some of the more common ones in New Jersey. Don't know about all states. But again, this is very oversimplified. You do need to speak to the appropriate professional for your own situation. So in New Jersey, here's a place to get started, this website. Now this link is a live link, so when you download the presentation later tomorrow, you can just click on the link. But this is business.nj.gov. Other states have similar offices for starting a business to help you operate and grow your business. This one has kind of a startup guide and a startup kit. They've got different resources. They got a large FAQ page to help get you started. So a good place to get started, maybe even before you speak with an attorney, you can do a lot, if not all the research on your own. Okay. So now that you're decided to become a consultant, let's think about how much should I charge? What would my rate be? Now, of course, if you're employed by a consulting company, that's kind of set for you. You might haggle a little bit, but they're going to offer you a rate. When you're an independent working, you're going to have to figure that out for yourself. So you're really going to charge market rate. And market rate is what a typical customer will pay for your type of consulting service. If the typical market rate is $100 an hour, not usually you're going to get a whole lot more than that. So just be prepared for that. So as an example, if you typically might receive about $100 an hour, the market rate is probably somewhere between $75 and $125 per hour. Each profession is going to be slightly different. The marketplace could be different also. You might command a little bit more money, let's say in New York City or Philadelphia, than you might be in a more suburban area, even in New Jersey. Here's kind of a way to figure out about what you might want to charge. Look at your last annual salary. You divide that by 52 weeks and you divide that by 40 hours, or maybe you divide by 35 or 37 and a half hours. And that'll give you what you were paid previously hourly. You'll actually be surprised how low that number is. But then consider other costs that you have to cover. Your costs for benefits, your administrative time, your personal time off, any other expenses that you may have. Consider all those, come up with an hourly value to that, and add that back in as well. And that'll give you an idea of really what you need from an hourly salary. There's also, I found this website called founder.com, and they have this guide for how to charge for consulting. So again, this is a live link. When you download the presentation, you can just click on this link in the PDF and you can go to this website, but you're certainly welcome to take a screenshot of it right now. But this is another guide to help you understand how much you might be able to charge for your type of consulting. So a bit of a guide. So this is the question that came up earlier. Do I need insurance? So really what errors and omissions insurance is, it's a liability protection insurance. It protects your company, your workers, which includes you or anybody that you hire, may not cover your subcontractors, and any other professionals against claims of any inadequate work or any negligent actions. So let's say you are a finance professional and you were working on a project as a consultant and you made some mathematical error and it cost the company tens of thousands of dollars. The company may say, you were negligent, we're coming after you for tens of thousands of dollars. So you will either pay for that out of pocket or your insurance will pay for it for you. So the reason why they have it, because in the United States, everybody gets sued. The company, the workers, anybody associated with the projects. And so you have to decide if you're going to need this sort of insurance. And how do you decide? It depends on the type of work you're doing. Are you working on very risky projects that if you slip up might be a dent in your pocketbook? And how much tolerance do you have for that risk? You may say, I don't engage in a lot of risky behavior, so I'm not worried. Or you may say, I do engage in risky behavior. So let's say someone like me, I'm working on a website. What if I brought down the website and it cost the company a lot of e-business, electronic business? They may want to come after me to make up for their lost business for the time until I brought the website back up. So you have to think about that kind of information. Of course, if you've got plenty of money in the bank, you may say, I don't need the insurance. I can tolerate it. I'm self-insured. So there's a lot of, you do need to speak with insurance professionals. And then there are a lot of different riders. It gets very detailed. And I'll give you some examples. Let's say you have your own personal car, your regular car that you've had for a few years. And it's always been properly insured and all that kind of thing. And heaven forbid you get into an accident. And in the accident, when the police officers there, you make a statement. Well, yes, I was on my way to my contract assignment and I had this accident, this person hit me. Now that it says contract assignment or went to see a customer, anything like that, if your insurance company picks that up, they may say, your car is for personal use, not for business use. We are not paying this claim. So you may want to check with your auto insurance company. Would I be covered in that case? Do I need a rider, an extra insurance rider, to protect me for using my car for business purpose? Typically, personal use does cover commuting, but not business travel. So just be careful. Here's another thing. Let's say you work out of your home office. Everything is fine. You're comfortable. You're able to work conveniently. And you order something from an online store like office supplies or a new computer or something like that. And so the delivery person, UPS, FedEx, delivers the package, slips on your property, and then decides to sue you. Maybe you didn't clear enough ice from the sidewalk. Well, your homeowner's insurance will cover you if they delivered a personal item. Your homeowner's insurance may not cover you if the UPS person was delivering business items for your home-based business. Again, talk to your insurance professional, see if you need proper coverage for that. So there's lots of little places where insurance, you need to ask those questions. This is a fun one. Do I need to collect sales tax? The reason why this is a fun one is I did go to a New Jersey State tax seminar. I do now have the ability to collect and report sales tax. And it was just incredibly vague. They were thoroughly vague. And I just remember that being very odd. I had to do a lot of research on my own, but they gave me the proper direction. And so, yeah, for taxable products and services, you do need to collect sales tax. And I remember I was in this seminar and I raised my hand and I said, well, what are taxable services? And I was told products are taxable unless New Jersey tells me they're not.
Can you imagine? I wish.
Somebody is talking? Okay, good. So this is what they told me. Products are taxable unless New Jersey says they're not. So they said, how do I know? And they gave me a link to a website on the Treasury, New Jersey Treasury website, of all these different types of businesses, and each one was a separate link depending on the nature of the business. Each one is a different type of qualification for sales tax. So you do have to do a little research on your own, but it's not terribly hard. And then the nice lady told me services are not taxable unless New Jersey says they are. And as I raised my hand, she said, same thing. You need to go look at this website and see what pertains to you. So a lot of professional services, the kind that I offer, building websites and whatnot, tend not to be taxable. So I typically do not have a need to pay sales tax. But I did register to pay sales tax just in case. And to kind of give you an example, if you go to the supermarket, you've probably noticed food items are not taxable. But that's not entirely true because some items that we kind of consider food are. So juices might not be taxable, but soda is. Snack foods may be taxable. The other thing is bread, meat, cheese, not taxable. But if they make you the sandwich, all the ingredients and the work going into it is entirely taxable. So things like that, little nuances. You do in New Jersey, you file quarterly. Or you can file monthly if the amount of sales tax exceeds $10,000. But typically you file quarterly. Each state is a little different. So if you're not in New Jersey, just check your own state. So if you're in New York, you may want to check there too. They do file differently. Okay. And in New Jersey, here's the website for registering. It's a real easy process. You're basically just giving them your name and your EIN, and then they will send you a certificate. And mine's in a file cabinet. That's it right there. But mine's in my file cabinet. It just says I am now allowed to collect sales tax. And every quarter I do report I'm not paying sales tax. I've only once paid sales tax for business, and it was because of a resale of equipment that I did. Okay, here's our next intermission. Let me open up chat and see. Am I going to email the presentation? No, you're going to download it. That's because it could be that if Janelle has all your emails, she may be able to email it or make it available, because I've made it available to her as well. But you can download it, and I will give you that place to download it
Yes,
shortly.
David.
What's that?
Yep, myself or Gary.
Yes, I can send,
Yep, myself or Gary will be able to do that as well.
There you go. So that'll make it that much easier. Yep. Any other questions to this point? It is a lot of information, and so hopefully not too overwhelming, but maybe you're thinking about some things. Yeah.
Dave, would you take calls from people?
I mean, after the presentation, like the next few days?
Like if somebody wanted to call you and ask and talk to you offline?
Yeah, sure.
Like if they
Yeah.
wanted to talk with you offline?
Yep, my contact information is going to be on the last slide.
Oh, all right.
The slide
Okay,
before
good.
that will have the where on my website you can find the presentation in case you don't get the email timely enough or whatever. Yep. But can I repeat the need for an EIN when you freelance? Right. So when the EIN is when you have a company. So in my case, I have an LLC. It's an independent legal entity in New Jersey. And so the EIN for the company, it's like the Social Security number. So I actually opened a business bank account, and I did not use my Social Security number. I used my EIN. I have a business credit card that has my EIN, not my Social Security number. The little funny thing with that is, so I've got actually very good credit, excellent credit score. But when I started my business, I had zero credit, no real credit. So I had a brand new credit card, and the most they would give me is $1,200 credit limit on it. And that's because I haggled up from $1,000. Meanwhile, my personal credit cards are way higher than that. Wasn't a problem. So, but yeah, that's why you do it. You just keep your tax registry to your company separate from you. If you are not a company, if you're not a legal entity like an LLC or an S Corp or any of the others, you can use your Social Security number. Let's see. If working from home, should you invoice clients for software/information services and/or data processing services together with software services? I'm not sure I understand the meaning of your question. I'm thinking yes. That's what I think it is. Oh, for sales tax. So you have to double check, but I'm pretty sure software and information services that you sell to another entity or business is actually not a taxable event, not a sales taxable event. So if you contacted me and I built your website as an example, and I charged you a dollar amount, $1,000 to build a website. By the way, that's not my regular rate. Don't get all excited about it. I would not be collecting sales tax for that type of service. And I never have a problem if I have multiple types of services, putting them all on the same invoice. If you're wondering, what if some of the items are taxable and some not, just add the sales tax on the taxable item. At the end of the quarter, what you'll do is you'll report your total income for the quarter, the amount of that income that was subject to sales tax, and then you'll calculate and pay the sales tax. So you're saying, yeah, I've got $1,000, but only $400 is subject to sales tax, not income. We're talking about sales tax. And then here's the, 20, 30 bucks or whatever it comes to for the sales tax. Nancy, and what is the bare minimum professional liability amount you would purchase? I cannot tell you that. It all depends on the nature of your risk and what your risk tolerance is. If you are working with a lot of clients and you have working with $1 million computer systems or millions of dollars of accounting or whatever, you'll want coverage of $1 million or more. If you are someone that doesn't have a lot of risk, you'll want less coverage. You'll need to understand for yourself what the proper amount is. It is possible that your client may say that they want you to have a certain amount, in which case you can go to an insurance professional and pay for it only for that amount of time. And Amira was clarifying the sales tax, which I think I answered. Let's see. Okay, good. So I answered that. Great, thank you. Okay. I'll wait another moment to see if anybody has any other questions. And if not, then we'll go to the last portion of this program and then have final Q&A and wrap up then. Okay, so I've kind of talked about why you might want to become a consultant. I told you some of the things that you may have to do in order to become a consultant, at least legally from that perspective. So let's talk about actually how to become a consultant. Now, when I do this presentation in front of a room, I really expect you to answer out loud. In this case, you would repeat after me, well, to yourself, or maybe if you got your cat on your lap. So repeat after me and say, I am a consultant. That's all it takes in New Jersey to be a consultant. You don't have to have a company. You don't have to do anything else legally. You just have to say, I am a consultant. And that's all it takes to become a consultant. Among the things you're going to want to do is you're going to want to identify the niche in which you have knowledge, experience, and support. Don't try and become a consultant if you don't have a lot of knowledge or experience or a means of getting support. And the reason why is, as a consultant, you're being hired for your expertise. So that's the knowledge and experience. The support is what happens when you need to investigate or do some work on the project and you need help from somebody else. When you were an employee, you might have talked to a coworker or your boss or somebody in another department. When you're independent, you have to create your own support network. It could be former coworkers. It could be a service provider. You have to decide what makes the most sense, other professionals that you know. So you want to make sure you hire, you know your niche. Typically, as a consultant, you're not hired as a generalist. You are hired for a specialty. That's what gets you the contract and the big dollars. And make sure you choose and research your target market. So make sure you understand how your marketplace hires people and the nuances of it. And so you develop the expertise there as well, because you're going to be, again, the expert in your target. And you also want to begin to alert your professional network and let them know that you are working now as a consultant. You may want to make sure that you speak with an accountant and lawyer so that they properly help you answer those questions. There's not a lot of money involved. Typically, you just may need a little bit of guidance, maybe from your lawyer, how to set up the LLC if you're going to do that, or your accountant, you might have a tax question or two. So you're not really talking big investment, but you'll want to make sure you get those people involved. And you'll want to develop a business plan. And I'm going to summarize this as there are two types of business plans. There are big business plans and there are small business plans. Why do you need a big business plan? If you're going to be someone based on your business where you're going to go and try and solicit funding from venture capitalists, go to a bank for a loan, go to private equity companies, that sort of thing, you're going to have a fairly robust plan that's going to define the marketplace that you're going to penetrate, where you're getting your knowledge base from, how you're going to service your clients, your anticipated growth, how you're going to support the growth rate. You're going to have all these statistics. If you're going to be an independent like me, you can actually build your business plan on a sheet of paper. And I think it's important to put the kinds of things that we just put here. What is your target market? What's your niche? What's your area of expertise? What's your support mechanism? And the reason why is you don't want to stray from what you're really going to be good at. And every once in a while, you just have to come back and look at it. So it can be a very basic or simple business plan, the types of customers, the types of product, the types of service you're going to be offering. But if you're going to go after big money, it is going to have to be a lot more in depth. But yeah, put it together. Now that you are a consultant, name and create your company. So naming your company, you may have to look around. Now, if you're going to form a legal entity like a corp or an LLC, the New Jersey State website, and other states have this as well, they have a free lookup feature. Look up the names of companies. So you want to make sure that you pick a company that doesn't already exist in New Jersey or that's not trademarked. So you're not going to call yourself Coca-Cola. That's trademarked. That would be a trademark violation. You're also in New Jersey not going to call yourself Princeton Technology Advisors. You can't because I'm Princeton Technology Advisors and I'm already registered in the state of New Jersey. So name your company. And I'm of the opinion your name should be symbolic of what you do. There's a woman that I know in business, very bright lady. I understand what her business is. And the name of her company is called 20 Lemons. And I'd ask you to raise your hand and think about what business is she in? Well, you might think, well, maybe she makes lemonade, or maybe she's in a bakery, or she's a cooking or something, grows lemons to sell trees. And that's not what she is at all. She's an information technology company and does good work. But to me, it's not clear. I went down the path of, I put technology in my company name because I'm a technology person. I would suggest you do the same thing. Register your website address right away. You can create your website when you're ready, but as soon as you know the name of your company, also look on GoDaddy or Google Domains or any of these, look for a web address. Get the web address right away. On Google, a web address is $12. If you're teetering between 2, 3, or 4 of them, get 2, 3, or 4 of them, hold on to them for a year. Once you settle on the name, renew the one you're keeping and let the others expire, because registering of web addresses is like rent. You keep it for as long as you pay for it. When you stop paying for it, you stop owning the web address. The reason why you do it right away is, especially if you're going to go down the path of registering your company in the state, registering your company as an LLC or a corp is part of the state's public record. You just did a search to see if companies are there. So there are hackers, or squatters, I should say, not hackers, squatters. They will constantly look at the recent companies that were just created and then go on and register web addresses. Now you'll say, there's the perfect web address, and you'll see it's for sale. And you'll contact that person. They'll charge you many times what it would have otherwise been worth. You've lost your web address. Get it right away, the same day that you create your company, so you don't have the chance of losing the web address. Also, develop your professional support network. Reach out to people that you can reach out to when necessary to ask questions and get support, or maybe a group of subcontractors that can do additional work for you if you need, or to provide a service that you can't directly provide. So you'll want to make sure you have a good support network. You may need certain licensing or certificates. Now, some careers do actually require state licensing. Obviously, if you're going to be a plumber or an electrician in the state of New Jersey, you would have to be state licensed. But certificates are different. So you may have been an IT project manager working for a company for a long time and never had PMI certification. But now as an independent, it really pays to have PMI certification because you're competing with other contractors with PMI certification. If that's the case, you may want to get those certificates as well. Look into those. And don't do it alone. There's a lot of places you can get advice. Certainly the professionals in your network, but then there are also these organizations like SCORE, the Small Business Development Centers, and others that offer free advice to companies and independents that want to start up. So you can look for, in the Princeton area, is princeton.score.org. Bergen has one too. I don't remember their website, but you just look at score.org and put in your zip code and you'll find the nearest chapter, and they will help you with mentors and other support resources as well. And update your LinkedIn profile. Let people know, let LinkedIn know you have a current position as a consultant. Remember, you'll have that 100% LinkedIn profile. So there are different ways to generate business when you're an independent consultant. Of course, if you landed an opportunity with a consulting company, they found the business and they contracted for you. But when you're independent, you may need to continue to generate business on your own. Find business networking groups. So right now we're in a job seeker support networking group. Find the business networking group. BNI is a very big organization. LATIP is another big organization. There are lots of local chapters. Some towns have multiple chapters. The reason why is the members of these groups are the only one of their work profession. So if you are an IT project manager and you join your local chapter, it's because you'll be the only IT project manager in that group. And sometimes bigger towns have multiple chapters so that they can have multiple opportunities for project managers. It is possible that you'll have multiple attorneys or multiple other professions when they have specialties. For instance, you won't have 2 business law attorneys, but you might have a business law attorney, an employment law attorney, a family law attorney, because they don't step on each other's toes. But you will build a referral network with these sorts of groups. Join meetup.com. Meetup.com is not the world's largest dating website. That's not what it is. It's a very robust platform. It's completely free that promotes local groups. It promotes them online. They advertise them online, but the idea is to promote local groups of individuals. And so you create a profile with both professional information and I'd say put some personal likes and dislikes as well. Because what meetup.com will do is run night and day looking for groups that match your profile. So if you're an IT project manager, you might get an email from Meetup one day that says, there's an IT project manager group that's meeting in Bridgewater. Go, don't go, visit, don't visit. The meetup.com is free. The group may have a fee. Some do, some don't. So I would say do that. Also consider joining personal groups. If you're a business project manager, but you also like cats and dogs, you may want to join a pets group and meet other like-minded people because you never know what they do for a living. So you may get business from them as well. As an independent, you may want to get into meetup groups and business groups that not are in your profession, but are in the profession of your clients. And that's what you're going to want to do so you can find more business prospects. Join and participate in LinkedIn groups. Much like the meetup.com, you can join LinkedIn groups, either the profession that you're in or the profession you're targeting to do work and develop contacts that way. Attend professional associations and conferences. It's a bit muted now with coronavirus and the pandemic because we're not really meeting in person. A lot of conferences and organizations have shifted to virtual. Sign up and join them. Again, could be professional oriented in your profession or professional oriented in your client's profession, where you could potentially meet and help people. For instance, I'm an IT person. I belong to a networking group, an association of not-for-profit organizations, because about a third of my clients are not-for-profits. So I've joined that kind of networking group to meet people and potentially help them when they have an IT need. And make sure you alert your network. Let them know. You may send out a broadcast email. I'm working now as a consultant. Here's the services I offer. Happy to connect with you to explain more. Get others to work for you as well. And be active on social media. Beyond LinkedIn, there may be other social media platforms to be on. I cannot tell you the best social media platform, except to say it's the social media platform that your clients would typically use. So your clients and your competitors, if they're frequently on Facebook, that's where you want to be. If they're frequently on Twitter, that's where you want to be. So you'll want to start with the one where you have the most opportunity to make connections in your marketplace. What if I need health insurance? Right? So you left your permanent full-time position and now you're an independent, you need health insurance. So here are a couple places that you may be able to find health insurance. One is, this is the type of insurance typically pays for medical, surgical, and dental and other healthcare expenses. You probably know about it from your employer, former employer. Now, of course, if you're living with a spouse or partner, he or she may be able to cover you. This is not an issue, but if that's not the issue, if you were the person that did provide that for your household, you may have to find it again on your own. When you're self-employed, you can certainly go to an insurance company, go to them directly and buy private healthcare insurance. And there's a bunch of companies in that little picture on the side. I can't assure you that those are all in New Jersey or any one state. Private health insurance can typically be the most robust because you can pick the plan that you exactly want. It may also be fairly expensive, but on the other hand, if you get the coverage you need, it may be worthwhile. And of course, if you're getting in a good rate, from the work, it may not be as much of an impact because you're getting good income to cover the insurance, but you can buy health insurance privately. There are group plans. Always group plans are less expensive than individual plans because the risk is spread out among lots of people. If you have employees, at least one other employee, you can qualify for a group plan. If not, certain professional associations do offer their members health insurance or the ability to buy health insurance in their group. See if that may be applicable for you. Another is an organization called the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. It's an independent business advocacy group. Of all the industry associations in the country, the New Jersey one is actually the largest in the country. Membership is about $300 or $325 a year. It's kind of like a chamber of commerce, but not quite. But they do offer group health insurance. They offer other benefits as well. You can get discounts on shipping, discounts on office supplies. So it may actually pay for the membership from the discounts that you get. So join a group plan. And then the healthcare exchange. It's also known as the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. So when you're in New Jersey has its own exchange. It's called Get Covered New Jersey. It's a little over a year old. So if living in New Jersey, you really won't go to the national exchange, which is healthcare.gov. You'll go to the New Jersey exchange. There are 3 or 4 insurance companies that sell insurance through that. So Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act actually is not insurance. It's the laws that guide the insurance companies on what they're obligated to cover. And then the participating insurance companies will be listed on Get Covered NJ. So go take a look. And then with each of these insurance companies, they do have different tiers or levels. Some tiers have greater deductibles, but then they have lower premiums. Some have lesser deductibles, but have higher premiums. You have to decide what makes the best sense for you. If you have a very low income, you may even get tax subsidies from your tax return. But do be careful. You may want to speak to an insurance or tax professional to see what that's going to be. If, for instance, that you said, well, at the beginning of the year, I'm not expecting any big contract, so therefore I'm going to get the biggest tax advantage, that's fine. But if you land that big contract and make big bucks at the end of the year, you will have to pay back that savings that you may have had because it is based on income for the year. If you're 65 or older, you're eligible for Medicare and the Medicare supplements. Medicare doesn't cover everything, so you may need supplement plans, but this may be a good option for you as well. Do keep in mind, just because you're 65, if there are other members in your house that are not yet 65, they likely do not qualify for Medicare. Some people with certain health issues may, but don't, you have to check with an insurance professional about that. So if you are 65 or older and you have a spouse who's under 65, you probably can't cover your spouse with Medicare. And actually Medicare is individual. Each person gets covered separately. COBRA. So if you're recently laid off from a position, COBRA is another way to get your former company's insurance. You're paying for it all out of pocket. Now, one thing is premiums on insurance can be tax deductible, except COBRA premiums may not be a business tax expense. It's just a quirk in the law. Again, talk to your tax professional. So COBRA may not be after tax the best plan or the best value for you, but it does give you coverage until you figure out if one of these others makes sense for you. So it's an option as well. So home stretch. So consulting, it is an alternative to permanent employment. Or it could be your new permanent employment, but it is an alternative to being employed by a third-party company. There are pros and cons, but among the pros, it is a resume gap filler, so you can do it for a short period of time till you land your next full-time opportunity. You do have the opportunity to develop new and varied types of experience to add to your resume, and you may actually get paid more because the rates tend to be higher for the projects that you're working on. You don't need to become an LLC or a company, but you can. We talked about that with some of the benefits. And then just declare, I am a consultant, and get yourself started. So here's the slide deck. So if you want to look right away before Gary or Janelle sends out the email, this is my website, princetontechadvisors.com, princetontechadvisors.com. At the top, click on the Workshops tab. And then at the bottom of that page, click on Recently Offered Programs. And there'll be a whole list of all my programs for this year. There are close to 40 of them. And this is the one at the top right now. Okay. And so any other questions? And I will put my contact information here as well. And so let me quickly check chat to see if there are any other questions. So from Russ, thank you for the presentation. What equivalent sites would we look for info in other states for those outside of New Jersey? I have 2 LLCs. Well, you'll have to go onto the state's probably Treasury's website or the equivalent. Each state is different. I do have a New York version of this presentation. I just didn't memorize the website. I have a Pennsylvania version of this presentation. Unfortunately, I did not remember, did not memorize that URL or website. You can actually look at my list of presentations on that same page, and you'll find the one that I did for LHH in New York. You can see the link for that, and the one that I did for Philadelphia Area Great Career Group, and I have the link there. So, but each state will have some means in their treasury or finance department where they'll provide information. I'm sure you can do something as simple as Google the word LLC and the state that you're interested in. And Russ's second question, how would someone change the name of their LLC or corporation to accurately reflect what it does? So I'm assuming you have an LLC already, and maybe, it's just a generic name. So, there are a couple of things you can do. One, you can actually register another LLC and let the old one expire, because an LLC gets renewed every year. There's probably a way to legally change the name. I don't have any information about that. I'm sure an attorney would. And then there's another way of creating basically a DBA. I forgot what the legal term is, fictitious name. It's called fictitious name. And so if, my company was legally called David Shuckman Consulting, I could be Princeton Technology Advisors doing business as David Shuckman Consulting, and the fictitious name would be Princeton Technology. So you would have to speak with a business law attorney to find out what makes the most sense for you. That probably is the best advice I can give you. Paul mentioned, or register the domain before registering the LLC. Yeah, so on the same day or right before. You don't want to wait too much longer for registering a domain, because after a couple of days, the squatters may find it and they will sit and squat on it. And I can tell you a story. My old company, I worked for them for 12 years until 2012. I managed for 3.5 years their infrastructure. And during that time, we were acquired and were given a new name. And also during that time, it was time to renew our website from the old company name. And so I went to management and I said, it's time to renew the web address. And they said, nope, we're letting it expire. We're not known by the old name. We're only known by the new name. And it was completely stupid because it didn't cost very much. Well, what happened was about a year later, the management came to me and said, we've decided we want to re-register the old website name. And the reason why they wanted to was a lot of their customers complained. They wanted the old name on a web address. So we could certainly have multiple web addresses for a website. So I went back out to try and find it, and somebody squatted on the name. And I knew he squatted because he advertised. He said, here's my contact information. And I was given permission to spend up to $500 to buy the new name back. This guy probably spent $10 or $20 just to get the name for that year. And I called up the guy and we had a nice conversation. He said, no, I'm not going to take 500. He said, the lowest I'm going to take is 20,000. That's what I've got it posted. And I understood his logic, although I thought it was flawed. I said, look, the best I can do, I'm sure I'll go back to my manager and I can get $1,000, but I can't get more than that. He said, no, he said, you got to get close to 20,000. I'm not budging from that. So somebody was really squatting on an important business name. So that stuff happens. Any more? A lot of thank yous, which I appreciate. Thank you very much from all of you. Where on your website are the presentations located? So I think I just showed you that, but I will, oops. Here it is. So where are the presentations located? You go to my web address, which is princetontechadvisors.com, click on the link workshops, and then this page displays with these 3 choices, and click recently offered programs. All of my presentations, actually since 2014, are all there on their own pages. So you're welcome to get any of them that you want. I would suggest for this particular topic, take this one, the most recent, because this program has evolved over the past few years. A lot of compliments again. Thank you very much for those compliments, everybody. All right. So I think that's it, Gary and Janelle. Once again, thank you very much for all of you for joining me and your participation today. And Janelle and Gary and John, thank you again for the invitation. I had a good time this evening.